Good afternoon, everybody. It is 13:15, and that's 1:15 for all you people who don't understand military time. And today is Tuesday, the 22nd of March, and this is the 43rd CALLERLAB convention, and this is the session entitled Jumpstart Your Club. Now, see that if you've ever been a moderator or panelist, you know there's a meeting on Monday morning, and you know you're given a script that you have to say exactly what I just got through saying. The reason why you have to say all that is because this session is being recorded, and the people at home need to know everything that they need to know about what they're listening to. So that's why every time you go into one of the sessions and you hear that little spill, that you know the session's being recorded. My name is Vernon Jones, and I'm going to be the moderator, which means I'm just going to give a few introductions, and I'm going to turn it over to Dana, and Dana's going to talk for an hour and 15 minutes. And I know for a fact that Dana has already prearranged somebody to call him here in about 15 minutes under the guise of, I've got convention business to take care of, and he'll probably be leaving here very shortly. But the other person, like I said a while ago, is the panelist is going to be Dana Schirmer, who is the executive director of CALLERLAB. As best I know, and as the best as I can tell, I was the first one. I'm not trying to ring my bell or anything, but I was the first one to ever use consecutive Saturdays as a teaching method to learn how to square dance or get into this activity of ours. So many times clubs get bogged down in the lessons and consecutive lessons, and we don't want to do that anymore. Now we got to go to lessons again, and it's going to be X amount of weeks and all this kind of thing. And they're constantly looking, but they're not really listening to new ideas. And so a group of us got together, me and some other progressive thinking, for lack of a better word, people that were in charge of a club at that time. And we came up with, let's just try some consecutive Saturday things. And we didn't have any idea how any of that was going to work. And so they went out and advertised to some folks, and got 13 people to try this. And they told them it was going to be something that they had never tried before. They didn't know how it was going to work out. So they got 13 people to come, and of course they had some angels and that kind of thing. And the idea at that time was to start about 9 o'clock and go till about 4 o'clock Saturday afternoon. The people who were organizing it from the clubs asked me, says, how far do you think we can get? And I said, I have no earthly idea. They said, can we get all the way through? And I said, there's absolutely no way we can get all the way through. I mean, sure, we could probably get all the way through. I can show anybody anything, but can they grasp it? Can they maintain it? That kind of thing. So, properly done, no, they can't. They're not going to get all the way through. And so we tried it for 3 Saturdays. Was the first time that first thing that we did. And what we found after the end of the first Saturday was that people came in and they learned pretty well, learned pretty good. You know how it is the first one night or two, the things that we're learning, you can stack a bunch of stuff on. And then we had lunchtime, and we provided lunch for them. And the reason why we provided lunch for them is because we didn't want them going out to eat. And the reason why we don't want them going out to eat is that gives them an excuse to not come back. And so we kept them there. And then after lunch was over with, we continued right along. And I found at about 2 o'clock, it was quite obvious they weren't going to learn anything new anymore. They had their fill, and they weren't going to intake any more learning. And that was about 2 o'clock. And about 3 o'clock is when the mental breakdown started happening. We started having trouble with circle left. So it became very obvious that perhaps 9 o'clock until 4 in the afternoon was a little long. One of the things that we learned in that initial trial. We also learned in that initial trial how important nutrition is during the course of the day. That first times that we had it. We did like everybody else did. You know, we wanted to provide a little snacky thing in the morning with coffee and all that kind of stuff. So we went out and bought a bunch of donuts and stuff. And donuts turned out to be heavy. And the more donuts you eat, the heavier you get, and the more sluggish you get, and the more you don't feel like you want to do very much. So what we learned from that aspect was that instead of donuts or pastries or things of that nature, we want to provide fruits. Fruits increase your metabolism. Fruits can actually warm your body up on a cold day because they increase the metabolism. The metabolism increases your body warmth. And the amazing fact that providing fruits to people in that kind of an environment is that they will actually eat it. So if you provide it for them, they will eat it. We also learned that you don't want to have too much to eat during the middle of the day. You want to have something that's light, and also that you want to that is easy to make. One of the greatest things that I saw was that one day I heard they announced that they were going to have one of the days they were going to have for lunch was Frito pie. How many's ever heard of that? Okay, that's a Southern thing, and Texas thing. Frito pie is nothing but chili poured over Fritos, and it's a wonderful comfort food late at night. It's a great thing. And the way that they fixed it that day is they made, 2 or 3 big pots of chili, and then they went and bought Fritos in the small bags, like the lunch size, ripped the tops of them all open and poured the chili in it. And then used plastic spoons, and that was your container that you ate out of. You ate with the plastic spoon. If you wanted another one, you grabbed another bag and blah, 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 and you threw it away. You had nothing to clean up. It was a fantastic idea. So you want to provide stuff that's easy to make, that's not going to take up a lot of time. We found at the end of that 3-week period that we got through the basic program. Okay, we didn't quite get all the way through the mainstream program, and we knew that we weren't going to get all the way through it, so that was not a disappointment to us. We learned that, again, 9 to 4 is too long. So that what we started doing from that point is going from 9 till about 2. And then having lunch, not from 12, the traditional 12 to 1, but having it from 11 to 12 or something of that nature. One of the things that we learned that was amazing for us was the retention rate from week to week. We didn't know how much they were going to remember when they came back for the second Saturday or the third Saturday, and we found that the retention rate was very good. So there was very little review. Of course, there's always a time for review, and there's always a need for review, but it wasn't to the point where it was like teaching them something new. We increased to 4 Saturdays at that point. We have since increased to 5 Saturdays, and we find that's the best or the most optimum way of doing this type of format. Now then, when we first started it, we didn't call it, yes, on the 5th Saturday all the way through mainstream. And I've got something to add to that also. When we first started, we didn't have a name for it, and it has evolved. A lot of people call it Fast Track now. A lot of people call it Blast. I'm hearing the term Blitz now for what it's being called. Yeah, and it doesn't make any difference what you call it. It doesn't make any difference what you call it. This is just another teaching method. You've got, traditional method of weekly lessons that can be morphed into twice a week. You've got other things going on out there. You're now going to start hearing more and more about sustainable square dancing and the type of thing that they're doing. It doesn't make any difference what you give it. The most important thing, I think, that if you're going to use one of these quote-unquote accelerated methods, and that's for lack of a better word, is you've got to have a finishing program. You can't run these people through 5 Saturdays and go, okay, you're done, and throw them to the wolves and expect them to succeed. at your clubs, the clubs that are sponsoring this type of thing, have your workshops geared towards these people. It's an amazing concept. We want new people, and we want those new people that just went through our classes and things. However, we don't cater to them, and we can't figure out why in the world they're leaving. If you want these new people, if you covet these new people, then cater to them, and you'll keep them longer. You've got to have a finishing program. Just doing 5 Saturdays, cramming a bunch of stuff down their throat. I've heard it referred to as learning to square dance using the multiple Saturday method is like getting a drink of water through a fire hose. And there's a lot of truth to that. However, if you have a finishing program at the end of it, and you're nurturing these people and you're progressing them along, you'll be able to keep them. If you just throw them through the 5 Saturday thing and then just expect them to go out and survive for themselves, well, pretty soon they'll vote with their feet and you won't see them anymore. Again, I have mentioned the new Sustainable Square Dancing Committee that has been formed recently. That is another excellent way to jumpstart your club. If you're having trouble getting people, or if you're having trouble committing, and we all know what a pain it is to get people to commit to longevity of things, of anything that has anything long term, you may want to try one of the Sustainable Square Dancing aspect. Now, then a lot of people don't want to do such a thing. They don't want to what they call dumb down themselves. I've heard that term thrown at me quite a lot. They don't want to go backwards is another term I've had thrown at me quite a lot. However, the sheer fact that is what we're doing ain't flying, and the numbers don't lie. The numbers continuously to go down, and one of these days we're going to have to realize it. The Sustainable Square Dancing concept is one of it is not going to be mandatory that you change. If you feel like the way you're doing it is just fine, then keep doing it that way. However, history has proven that the reason why we have these kinds of sessions is because the things are not working the way they should be, and therefore that's why we continue to talk about these types of things. It's a shorter learning curve. It is one thing that could be easily learned in 3 Saturdays, which means multiple starts during the course of the year. And the old adage of one of our best advertising tools is new dancers in about their 10th, 11th, or 12th week are our best advertising, because they're going home and they're telling all their friends, and then they find out that they got to wait until the following September and able to get in. If you have shorter term learning curves, it's easier to get people in. It's the old saying of friends bring friends, bring friends, bring friends. You may want to look at that kind of thing to, rejuvenate your club's thinking, but it's going to take some progressive thinking. A lot of the clubs are going to be, they're going to be have opposition to that way of thinking. However, they're just going to, sometimes you just got to look at people and ask them, if you enjoy the way things are, then we'll just keep going until the money's gone, and then we'll find a new donkey to ride. But if you're if you're truly interested in restarting and rejuvenating the club, then we're going to have to look at different ways of doing things. And here's an option that you can do it. At this particular time, now that I've given a pretty good introduction there, Dana boy, and I haven't heard your phone go off yet. I'm going to turn it over to Dana and allow him to speak a little bit, and then I'm going to carry the microphone around. And if anybody has any questions whatsoever, again, I remind you that we're being recorded, and therefore, if anybody has any questions, raise your hands. I'll bring the microphone to you. Be sure when I get the microphone to you that you state your name and where you're from, and then ask the question, okay? This time, big hand, everybody, Dana Schirmer.
Thank you, Vernon. As Vernon says, it's new, it's an experiment, and I think most of you are aware that in 2005, CALLERLAB endorsed the Program Policy Initiative, which encourages experimenting. And this is an experiment that has worked in certain areas, have been tried in certain areas, and is a good tool. It's a good tool for the right people, for the right place. And you yourself have to determine, will it work for you? Will it work for your club? We have tried a couple times, but you have to evaluate and recognize what is walking in the door for classes. Because and who's your angels? Some of my angels are so old that they can't handle an all-day session. So I break them up. If I'm going to do a blast class, it's going to be you come in the morning, you guys come in the afternoon, and so they don't burn themselves out with the class. But at the same point in time, if the class comes in and they're mostly older folks, as Vernon said, about 2 o'clock, you're going to see them burning out. And you might as well recognize it and say, hey, folks, let's just call it a day, and we'll come back next week. Because it's a long day if you're going. Younger people will be okay, although there will be a point in time and you almost tell them they tend to glaze over a little bit. So we always try to keep the first part of the day when you're learning, a learning class experiment, and the latter part of the day is going to be just having some fun with the things already know, and also a little more lively fun. I may even throw some line dances and stuff in just to keep them where they're not concentrating completely on squares. Quite honestly, I don't do a lot of blast classes for the entry level. I use the same kind of concept as workshops for the retention side of it. You think about, why do we lose dancers? Because at the end of lessons, they get done with lessons, and all of a sudden they say, okay, next week is dance time. We want you to come with your outfits on and be at the different hall at 7:30 on the different nights you normally dance. And they sit there and get ready to go to the dance, and all of a sudden they kind of start questioning one another. Do you remember anything of what we're doing? Remember the calls we did last week? They don't. And I can probably go around the room and say, how many of you remember any of the calls in the mainstream program? Just go around. You might come up real quick, 6 or 7, but then you start, what were some of those calls? And the average dancer's that way. So they start questioning their own mind. Are we able to go dance at a club? Do we want to go and be made fools of at a club dance that we're not really sure what we're doing and what we're going to run into? So that's when they start getting self-doubts about themselves. So I use the blast class, what I call a mainstream blast, to do the last 17 calls of the mainstream program, right through the last 17 calls. Because those are the one we teach right at the end, and probably the one that most dancers have the most problems with when they get to club dances. During normal lessons, we've refreshed all the way through. The last few weeks, we don't get a chance to go back and teach and refresh, spin chain through, recycle, tag a line, scoot back. Those calls they learned last in the program. And I've noticed as a caller, those are the calls the dancers tend to have a problem with in a dance. So the blast I use is quite often is what I call the mainstream blast. And we workshop all day long those last 17 calls. And that has helped retain dancers. Now, when I do those dances, I get a lot of dancers from other clubs that have graduated and feel they have problems too, and they want to come try to refresh their memory of what these calls are. And what I find out is the very first few tips, I'm doing styling hints on how to do swings. They do swings, they end up facing out of the square, or they're trying to twirl, and they're facing the wrong way when they get done. So a lot of the first part of the morning, I'm doing not only the very first few calls of mainstream, but also here's some ideals that will make you a better dancer. So it's kind of a double edge. These things will help you make better dancers, and these things you can help you with your last few calls and practice these calls. So that's one of the strong points I use the blast class for. I also use a blast class for plus. And I do 2 or 3 Saturdays on plus. Just again, because a lot of dancers don't want to spend 10 lessons doing plus or learning how to do additional. If we do a couple Saturdays, 3 Saturdays, they're more able to commit to that than they are 10 Saturdays or 10 Thursdays or whatever you may have your lesson night. So I use the blast class for the plus program. I also use the blast class for caller schools. Most of my callers clinics and seminars are done on Saturdays. I used to do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I found out that most people aren't committing themselves to a Friday night or a Sunday, but they may commit themselves to a Saturday. But even the callers, as callers, new callers, they will not commit to a whole weekend. So I know why some of the caller schools have having problems getting people to commit to a whole week of caller schools, because it's a commitment. And like it or not, that's what we're running into. People do not want to commit to long-term lessons of any kind. So I feel the blast in itself is a way of moving forward with any type of program you might be doing. But you have to know your client, the people you're going to be working with, and you understand what they are able to commit to. What can they actually establish themselves to coming and doing. So with that, I'm open. Vernon, you did such a good job opening up. You want to open up for some questions? You want to?
Sorry, I was looking at my phone.
Yes.
Does anybody have any questions or anything or any comments they wish to? Please, I'm going to go here because I saw her hand and she's a female, so you lose.
I'm Risha Schlitter from Cary, North Carolina. When you talk about a finishing program, can you tell us more about what that means?
Yes, a lot of clubs still do, but a lot of clubs have also gotten away from the workshop format before their dances are concerned. Before their dances, it used to be all the clubs used to have 30-minute workshops before the club dance would begin. A lot of them did 1-hour workshops before the club dance would begin on Friday or Saturday night or whatever night it may be. So many of them now have gone to early round dancing before the clubs. Now then, before anybody starts jumping at me, I want everybody to understand I love round dancing. So don't start going back and telling everybody that CALLERLAB's official position is no round dancing before the dance. That's absolutely false. I do not, and I'm not advocating that. But what I am advocating is that when after we get through doing the set of Saturdays, whenever it may be, that round dancing take a back seat until we get the new dancers. Of course, we know where round dancing gets most of their new people from, but that round dancing take a back seat until we get the new dancers to where they need to be. Does that make any sense with anybody? Therefore, instead of the early rounds, that we have the workshops before the dance is concerned, and those workshops be geared towards what those new dancers need, not to what the experienced dancers want. Okay, notice the two words. Not to what the experienced dancers want, but what the new dancers need. They need more floor time. They need more practice. They may need a little more, for lack of a better word, drill before the dance is concerned, so they can get their confidence up. And we all understand what I'm talking about there. That's the kind of finishing program we need. If it takes a half a year, then it takes a half a year. But they're still up and dancing with the club instead of waiting the 6 months or whatever that it would take during the normal drudge of the conventional type of lessons, and we all know what happens at the end of those. Did that help any?
Ted Rotwitt, Pennsylvania. You said you did the 17 mainstream. Did you do that all in one 4-hour Saturday?
Basically, we start at 9 o'clock. We're done by 4:30. We break for lunch.
You're doing a 5 or 6 hour thing.
Yeah, and actually, as Vernon says, we break for lunch. We provide lunch. A lot of times we do it in January, February, because that's when some of the new dancers are graduating. We want to get them. We don't want them waiting too long to keep them refreshed. And sometimes I have people come up and say, "Hey, we got 3 couples that want to come back, and they've been out for about 3 years or 10 years. They want to get back in. They don't want to have to go all the way through lessons again." So we use those. But again, about 9 o'clock in the morning, depending where, I have people sign up for it. I have them sign up for the lessons, for the workshops, and so I know where they're coming from. But I've had people come in as much as 110, 120 miles coming to the workshop. Well, if they're coming that far, I don't want to start at 9 o'clock. I'll probably wait until 9:30 or 10 to get it started, and then that just prolongs when we stop. But again, there's going to come a point in time during the day I may say, you know what, I think we've hit our saturation point and we're going to stop. And even though we didn't get through everything, we'll try another one next week if that's okay with everybody. And most of the time they will be happy to do that. But Most of the time we can get through all 17 calls refreshing, not teaching, but refreshing.
Okay, if you're doing retread, I'm doing 5+ people now, and I'm doing what I call accelerated plus, and I call it. If they get it, I drill it 2 more times, I go on, and then all of a sudden they don't know it. I give them the definition, but they pick it because they've had it before. You just have to say the definition once, pull them through it, and they get it. If these are new people, I mean, God, it's going to take a lot more time. So so what you're saying, that this experience, a lot of it's not with brand new.
That's correct. Well,
Okay,
I use it more
okay.
for that phrase. The 17 is more refreshing, workshopping the things they should know, but I'm sure they don't have the confidence in knowing it, and that's the reason we do it that way.
And I think my experience, 10 years ago, we tried this Saturday thing to get people in, and this blast thing, and the people I had were in their early 70s, and exactly at 2:30 both times, this guy had done 53 Alaman lefts, and all of a sudden at 2:30, where do I go? I knew that was the end. But my last experience was I had a plus class that I was trying to do in 13 weeks, and the 2 couples were very active, and they only attended 6 on average of the 13 weeks. So I decided to have a plus blast class, and I did it 2 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. Their average age was mid-50s, and they had no problems retaining. This was all brand new. This wasn't recall. And I did the balance of 12 plus calls in those 5 hours, and the next week they came to our plus dance and danced. I mean, they danced and they were successful. In a couple of cases, the experienced people were breaking down, and their square was doing okay, so we felt pretty good about it.
Yeah. I can say from experience, when I first started calling, there was a call in our area that did a weekend series of plus. He started Friday night, teaching plus, all day Saturday, most of the day Sunday, and by Sunday afternoon, we're done with the lessons. Oh, by the way, tonight we're having the plus dance. You're coming to our plus dance. So it was a full weekend. But most of us back then were 30 and 40. And you're not going to recruit people in 30 and 40 right now. So most people coming in couldn't handle a whole weekend, I don't think. But back then it was capable of doing it. And but if you have the right group, a bunch of kids, college kids and so forth, yeah, I think you could do a whole weekend almost. But if you got anywhere in the age bracket where you're talking and what I'm getting, I would say Saturday's going to be about it.
Ron Kapnick, Hickory, North Carolina. Where do you do these events? In your home or in a facility? Or?
Yeah. No, I'm not sure in Vernon's case. In my case, I rent a facility. I have a facility that when I secured CALLERLAB's home office, I was looking for a home office, and that was all, 1,000 square feet for a home office. And the realtor I was working with said, well, I got this building over here is 1,000 square feet, over here is 1,500 square feet. You have to share the restroom with whoever's on either side of it, but you can have your choice, 1,500 square feet or 1,000. So I'm going back and forth. 1,000 is all I need, but 1,500 sure sounds like it'd be nice to have just for an extra place to work. I have a little extra space for storage or whatever. So I'm back, which ones I want to go, which way do I want to go. And finally he went to me and said, you know, if you took both sides, he'd make you a heck of a deal. And sure enough, what amounts to CALLERLAB has a nice office. We have 1,000 square feet, and we pay $850 a month, which is what we were paying in Florida. But in addition to that, the landlord pays for all utilities, water, electricity, heat, everything. It's all paid for by the landlord. And I get the other side for the equal amount, and all I have to do is work my tail off trying to make enough money to make rent. And everything I get for calling, my wife keeps for rent. But anyway, it's a really good deal for me because of the time we have to spend in the office. And so if I leave the office 6:30, I can walk next door and do my lessons. If we're there on Saturday, I can work Saturday right up until everyone leaves and say, okay, I'm going in and work in the office now. Because it's an ongoing thing for the CALLERLAB office. We're going to keep everything rolling, and sometimes that means Saturday, sometimes Sunday, and sometimes we take a Thursday off. but we keep things rolling, and by having the office next door, it helps me as well as CALLERLAB. So it's a good deal for us all. So that's the reason I have it. I also just last year stumbled into a church group, or church, I should say, church that is very much into exercise programs, and they have some type of grant with a local fund there in the Topeka area that they get money for having exercise programs at their church. They have a nice fellowship hall, and I went to them. They said, well, yeah, we'd like to have square dancing, and they would help promote it at the church, and we can have the hall free. Only thing is we can't charge. They don't mind if we put a can out saying free will donation, but we can't have anybody at the door charging. So that has helped us. And if it's open, the church is open, they let us use it. So if you come into something like that, that's good. But it's kind of hard to find the church groups that are willing to let you do it.
Susan Snyder, Jacksonville, Florida. The people that you all have at these blast classes, do they come from everywhere and then not necessarily go back to you as their regular caller?
And my refreshing, now I can't speak on Vernon's behalf because he does, like I said, he worked mostly with brand new dancers. In my case, they go right back to their clubs, and some of them are 100 miles away, like I said. But I have found that I get a lot of good friends out of it. That when I'm in the area, they'll come and to the dances when I'm there. But yeah, it's I'm not intending to start a new group or steal people away from their clubs. It matters of making them better dancers. If they feel better about it, then they will be long-time friends.
Yeah, it's funny to hear people talk about the saturation point that people get into when they do the Saturday thing. I mean, you can see it in their eyes, kind of like the eyes that I'm seeing on the second day of the CALLERLAB convention on Tuesday between the hours of 1:15 and 2:15. And then every eye that was closed is now looking at me now. I've only done mine with new dancers, new beginners that the club has gone out and advertised to and brought in. Like everything else, I have had people come up to me and say, "Oh, this will never work." I've had people come up to me and said, "I was wrong. It will work." But we've also had a lot of people from other clubs. You know, when you go to a new dancer dance or something of that nature, and they find out that they've been trying to learn to square dance for 10 weeks to get to this new dancer dance level, and we've been dancing over at our place for 2 Saturdays, and they look at me and they say, "You mean I could have gone 2 Saturdays and been the same place that I would have been in 10 weeks?" And the answer is yes, you can. And so, you know, they realize that there's something different out there. It's not for everybody. Obviously, there's always going to be, you know, exceptions to the rules everywhere. It's just an alternative. But, you know, I've never done a plus class from it just by pure choice, my choice. I've never done I've never done a refresher for using this format, my choice again. I've just used it to get new people into square dancing. The other question of where do we hold these things? We've always done them at a facility, although I'm not opposed to doing them at a home or my home or whatever. I just don't have the type of facility to do that at my home. So we do them at other facilities, churches, recreation centers. It's wherever. And we're just going to have to, you know, bear down a little more, ladies and gentlemen, and go out and start asking and begging and asking people to let us use their facility, and asking school systems and asking churches or whatever. What is come on, help me up. Utility companies, the gas company, the electric company, they've all got places, and we just got to go ask and talk and knock on doors and say, "Hey, we've got to go out and sell our activity." Okay, if you walk up to the door and knock on it and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a place to hold a square dance. Can I have it?" And the answer is going to be no. But if you go out and sell it to them, and the social aspects and the health benefits and that type of thing and all the advantages, then a lot of people are not going to tell you no. we have to have the gumption to go out and do that, and not just depend on somebody else to do it. It's up to us. We gotta be the ones. I had something else to say, and now I have completely forgot it. You've got to be more personable as a square dance caller, and even your club members. You've got to be more personal with these people on these Saturdays. You just can't treat this as a dance, do a little short teaching tip, take the music off, and then forget that they're there. You have got to act like you want them to be there. I hope you want them to be there. I mean, you went out, or somebody went out and got them all and drug them over here, and you know how it is, what it is. You got to drag them in, but usually once after you drug them in, you usually can keep them for a while. But you've got to treat them like you actually want them to be there. You've got to show that you care and you're happy that they're there. You just can't just ignore them. Okay, you're saved by the bell, I assume. You've got to, at lunchtime, you've got to engage them and talk with them and treat them like part of the family. If you just turn them out for lunch and let them go sit over in the corner and they don't feel like a part of the group, well, guess what's going to happen? Have we ever thought about that kind of thing? There are 1,400 million reasons why people leave square dancing, but I can guarantee you one of the reasons is not because they were having too much fun. And not because they felt like they were wanted, and not because they felt like they were part of the group. If they feel like they're part of the group and they feel like they're wanted and they're having fun, they're going to stay. And so that's what we've got to do to ensure that this type of thing, that anything succeeds.
Yep.
One of the things that I use...
Okay, I'm going to send a guy down there.
Oh, it's a controversy. One of the things that are conspiracies, what I meant to say. One of the things that I do to engage folks is to talk to them about history of square dancing during some of these down times, especially the lunchtime. We all go good and well that it doesn't take a full hour to eat something, so there can be conversation that goes on. These people are absolutely amazed that square dancing is international the way it is, that there's square dancing in Japan, that there's square dancing in other countries. Yes, I see you, Doc. That there's square dancing in Germany and Europe and all the other places. They're absolutely amazed that that kind of thing happens. They're amazed that square dancing has its deepest roots in France. They're amazed that they've all heard do-si-do, your baby, and away you go. But they are amazed that do-si-do comes from the French word dos-a-dos, which means, of course, what? Back to back, exactly right. We've all heard the word promenade before. We know what that is. Well, that's, the correct way is promenade? Man, that's a French word, is it not? French way is promenade. There we go. So that's where that comes from. They're amazed at the stories that you can tell. They're amazed at the history. Also, we can use that kind of time to demonstrate dance moves, because there's 3 different ways people learn. Does everybody understand what those are? You see it, you hear it, you do it. Okay, a lot of people have got to have that way of demonstrating to them. So you can use that time to demonstrate the hand holds, what you're supposed to be doing, the counter dancing that needs to occur, how you're supposed to hold each other when you swing, where you're not supposed to go with one of your free hands when you swing. That, if everybody understands what I'm talking about. How you can do these types of things. The styling aspects of square dancing that we have gotten away from can be taught during these down times. Okay, the courtesies in square dancing, all that kind of thing can be taught to these people as a means of, yes, informing them, instructing them, but also engaging them and keeping them interested and showing that you're interested in them. Questions? Comments? We are so good at this that you have nothing to say.
We also found, as Vernon was talking about the refreshments, having donuts, tend to weigh people down. We start offering both. We offer donuts. We also offer fruit, and we also offer protein bars. The protein bars get eaten up fast. They want those more than they want anything else. But that was kind of amazing to me because I like donuts, and I figure, well, everyone else wants donuts. But no, protein bars. The afternoon, as Vernon was saying, we found the best energy for people. Seems to get them perked back up. Ice cream sandwiches. All the grab those things and eat them, and they're ready to go again. But we also found that a lot of times we do it in the winter. My wife likes my chili, We serve chili, and sometimes that drink brings them down a little bit. But most people like it when we make it. But like I said, it kind of slows them up a little bit. So the ice cream sandwiches in the afternoon kind of picks them back up again. Also, I want to point out one thing that I mentioned: know your group. If you get a mixture of kids and older folks, it's hard. It's a hard class to do. Kids, you will think, well, they're tired of doing it. They're bored with it. They get bored because they can show 1 or 2 times. They're through it. And the average adult's going to take 15, 30 times to go through the same thing. The kids are bored with it. And when they get bored with it, they're not thinking, they're not concentrating. They're just out there on the floor. So they're going to burn out real quick unless you can move them forward somehow. Keep their interest in it, something new. I have told parents in the past, if they want to set out a tip, let them set out a tip. Let them set out a tip. You're breaking something. Oh. No. If you want to set out, let them set out, because they're not going to learn anything more, because we're still going back and reviewing for all the, and even if we do teach something new, they'll pick it up the next time. Vernon made a good point about using the downtime to do education, whether it be showing, and I do that. And even during lunchtime, I will tell them a story about Henry Ford and things like that, so they're relaxed and not. But one thing we talked about yesterday, I know we can't go around talking about the way it used to be. We want to always be positive about, well, you're going to enjoy this activity, and the more you do it, the more fun it is, and so forth. And but regardless if whether it's brand new people, mainstream reteach or whatever, the encouragement and just the positiveness and keeping it fun for them is the main thing. Okay, Ted.
Just a comment. Our club tried this CTM, the CALLERLAB CTM thing in the fall, and we got 29 people out. We graduated 14 of them in February. 7 of them weren't ready to come to our Saturday dances. They were really struggling. And we're starting another CTM in February. They're taking that over again, effectively acting as angels. And the other 7 are taking the balance of the mainstream, the other 22 calls. But what I found was we were used to getting people average age early 70s, some 60s, some late 70s. And most of them were almost retired and could come to our lessons on a night, on Monday nights when we had it. But what I'm finding with these people is a lot of them are working. They're having trouble. I had one guy who they took 4 lessons and they were having a ball, and then all of a sudden his work, he couldn't quite make it. And they dropped out. Another couple the same way. Another couple, the guy got whatever the deer tick thing is. Yeah. Well, I got Lyme disease, and he had to drop out. Somebody else came the first night, was having a ball, came the next night, fell on ice, broke her. So anyway, that's this blast class. I got this idea. The other person was a woman. They have her mother-in-law has Alzheimer's, and they're taking care of it. He works second shift. She works first shift, and there's always somebody with her. And when I told her that she could bring her mother to sit, and she said, yeah, she'll sit there. I said, yeah. She was elated. I figured this is one thing, squared anything. This person's going to get out of the town, get to dance and everything. But her husband was there second shift. I asked her, I said, well, if we had a blast class on a Saturday, would he be able to come? She said, yeah, we could set her mother-in-law there. We're both free. They could take that and get into squared. So we tried 3 different ways of getting things in. We tried lawn signs. We tried adult evening. And we tried our usual thing of personable things, free community center things, posting flyers. Anyway, we ended up with 60 new people in February. 34 of them came from adult education. 10 of them came from the flyers, and the balance came from the usual way we got things. Well, all the usual things we got, we had like 7 or 8 couples. We're down to 1 couple now. All these other ones are all a blast class would satisfy them. And one of the guys is available every other Saturday. So then I came up with the concept of, instead of how I was thinking of a 5-hour thing I did, have a 2-hour thing one week just to review and maybe teach a little more if they haven't gotten it, and then a third one to finish off the CTM, the 12 CTMs. I thought that would work. But then I got this idea, what happens if you can't make one of these three things? Then you're dead. So then I came up with the idea of having 2 of the first sessions back-to-back, 2 of the middle 2-hour sessions, and then 2. So if somebody can't make the first one, they can make the second one usually. And if they're working every other Saturday, they can get it. And other people that some people aren't as strong as others, some people might want to repeat and take two sessions, even though it's the same thing over again. So I came up with all these wonderful ideas, and the trouble is, how am I going to get angels to come out on Saturdays? That's what I'm struggling with now. I just wondered what people's reaction were to. I'm just dealing with this new idea of all these people working, and they want to come. I haven't had a single person that's told me there's too many lessons, I don't want to come, because they're all having fun. It's just that they can't come for injuries, disease, working.
That's an age-old question, and that's just one of those things. If that kind of thing happens, we adapt to it, and we provide those opportunities for them. If they can't come this Saturday or something happens, then we start the next Saturday, and then we have staggered starts. We do what we can. I mean, there is no magic bullet, no magic answer, and then and I wish there was. I wish there was a button I could push, and all the answers would be. You just got to keep trying different things.
Society's changing so much right now that people, it's just committal. Folks, during this convention, we probably had 20-some cancellations within the last week. I mean, that's how fast people had to cancel out due to health reasons or whatever, and most of it has been health, and that's our activity. So, and if you're expecting people to commit to 20-some lessons, that's a lot of possibilities for them to get ill and not be able to come.
That's just not that's not just our
no,
activity.
No, it's not
that's
our
just
activity.
Life in general. It's going to happen.
It's happening more everywhere.
One of the things that, before I get to Mike, one of the things that we need to realize about this type of concept is that the excellent opportunity that it provides for retreads, or people who used to square dance that now want to get back into it. We have forgotten those people. We got them, they came, they don't come anymore, and we've just flat forgotten them. One of the things that the survey did that we performed several years ago by StarWorks is they said that type of people is an excellent group of people to try to market to get them to come back. They came in, they had a good time for whatever reason, and there are 5 jillion reasons why they don't square dance anymore, but something happened. The kids started this on this night, or the grandkids started that on that night. Something happened and they couldn't come. That usually probably has ended by now, and they would love to get back into it. They've just hadn't been reminded that how fun it was. A gentle phone call to them to get them back in usually is all that it takes. They go, oh, yeah, I'm glad you called. We didn't know who to call, blah, blah, blah. You know how fast the leadership in square dancing changes from president to president to president. So, we need to have a resource for keeping track of these people. The thing that you can offer them is, I'd love to come back, but I've forgotten a bunch of stuff, but I don't want to go through 26 weeks of lessons. No problem. Do I have an answer for you? You can come to this 3 Saturday thing, and you'll be right back where you need to be. We can utilize this kind of thing in many, many different ways.
Very good. Dana, you mentioned mixed classes with younger. Oh, Mike Oliveri, Denver, Colorado. Sorry. Yeah, it is my first time attending. I've got the brown badge on someplace. You mentioned the mixed classes, the younger kids and the older adults. I've done several of those too and had problems, so I started checking with other callers. Somebody mentioned you take the kids aside and say, look, you guys are doing great, you're having fun, but I need you to do me a favor. Some of these older folks are having some problems, and you guys are doing so good. Could you dance with them and help them through the calls? And they're like, okay, we're special now, so we get to help. And it works great. They get out there and dance every time, and they help this person through the calls. And it keeps them involved. It keeps them alert. They're like, no, not that way. You want to do it this way. So they feel like they're really special helping the caller, and it keeps them active in the class.
Yep.
People like to be needed, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Aaron Goodman, Toronto, Canada. I have 4 teenagers dancing in our group of 50, 60, 70-year-olds. And, of course, they all learned very, very fast. And they've just done exactly what this last gentleman said. They go around helping all the other adults, and the adults just love it having these little kids beside them. That's number one. Number two, I've taken them aside and said, we're going to have an amateur night. I'll get you off some music. And now they're all excited because they're going to call, so they don't worry about sitting on the sidelines. They get up and dance because they want to learn more and improve what they're doing. So that's on that note. But the real reason that I wanted the mic was you're talking about these Saturday all-day sessions, and we're going to teach everybody, whether it be basic, mainstream, or plus, I don't care which group you take, you're going to teach all these dancers how to dance the full program in one day. My question is, does that really work? I've never tried it. I've always gone by the CALLERLAB system where they dance the year through and let the dancers dance and have fun. So my question to you is, does that day-long session really work, or are we forcing them through the program to put them out the back door as fast as we put them in?
Really, it's not one day. If you're doing beginner lessons, I think Vernon said 4 to 5 Saturdays. So it's not all in one day. You're doing over a period of five, or you can take, if you want to take 6 or 7, you can do that. There's nothing in stone in any of this. It's all your experimenting. You experiment when you want to do it and how you set it up. But it's not just one day. Even in mainstream, as Ted made, I wouldn't, but if you do mainstream, just the last 17 calls, I don't think I could teach it all in one day. I would do 2 days. If I'm refreshing people, 1 day is enough. Plus, it takes me normally two to 3, depending on attendance and how well I do it. But it's not going to be in 1 day.
Okay, the question is, does it work? Are we maintaining those dancers that you put through that program?
I have had good luck with retaining them, but you have to also plan ahead. When you get done with your last class, you want to make sure they can go to another dance real quick. You don't want to wait a month before the next dance available. As soon as you get done with any class, it should be immediately right into the dance flow, so they don't have a chance to get scared about what they forgot. They need to make sure they can move right on in and have a good experience with the first dance they go to. So I always try to make mine pre-planned enough that I know when they get done, there's a place for them to go dance very quickly. The next dance.
Okay, the other thing I'd like to mention is something I've tried this year. I've tried different things the last few years, and I didn't have much success in anything. So if you don't have success, you try again.
Yep.
And I started up what I call the community program of square dancing, 20 moves of basics. And I do it once a month, and I advertise and meet up on Facebook. And the people can come out and try square dancing. And I've maintained about 35% of those people into my class night. So they come out once a month. They don't have to know a thing. Every month you're going to recall the same stuff you called the first time. And, of course, you have your angels come out and dance with them and pretend they're new dancers with them. And it seems to work for me this year that they're moving over into the club night in basics.
That's good. Quick question around the room. Ted referred to the CTM. Do you all know what CTM refers to? Okay, and you weren't going to ask, huh? They're going to ask. The CTM refers to condensed teach method that the CALLERLAB endorsed a few years ago. It's a way of teaching differently, and it follows along similar to what Jerry Story's Sustainable Square Dance Committee is going to do. It's 50-some calls, let's say, and it's a way of getting people dancing quicker, but you're not all the way through the program. And the blast class works, in my mind, would work very well in that conjunction where you do the 12 lesson, give them dancing, and we'll finish up using condensed teach, using the blast method, finishing those last few calls. I think it's about 45. 45 calls. Okay. And again, there's nothing that's set in stone in that method.
It's actually just a different.
We got to be on mic, and we got Ron's next.
Ted Rotwood, Pennsylvania. It's actually the easiest way to explain it. It's just a different teaching order.
Yep.
I talked to Tim Mariner, who was one of the
Arthur.
authors of it. He said it's not intended to be a destination. It's a different teaching order, and the reason they reordered the teaching is so that you eliminate a lot of the duplicate calls like star through instead of slide through, die through, and they have the things. They have the calls that have the most choreographic variety is the ones they've kept, and they've eliminated a lot of the circle calls. So you can get you can go to a CTM dance, and the average mainstream dancer isn't going to realize that it's not a mainstream dance.
That's correct. The condensed teaching method is simply nothing more than a different way of getting through what we've always been getting through, a different way of doing it.
Ron Kapnick, Hickory, North Carolina. You said one weekend. We did a presentation to our local group in New Jersey a couple of years ago, and at that time I knew of 2 callers that were doing a one weekend thing. They started Friday night and ended Sunday night. Friday night, all day Saturday, Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. And they got most of the way through mainstream. And then they had to go do workshop things after that. But they didn't finish it. And that's what they were calling blast at the time, and that's why the fast track name showed up to kind of differentiate the two.
John Jones from Texas. I've never done a whole blast class. I have helped with some. And when Vernon first started this down in our area, I thought he was crazy. I said, boy, I don't think this is going to ever work because of the length of time that you would have the people on the floor dancing. I felt like that maybe they couldn't stand up to it. I was proven wrong. And the people did stand up to it, and they went through 3 Saturdays of 6 hours of dancing, sometimes 7. And like Vernon said, they fed them lunch so they wouldn't leave the building. And it worked. And I have found that the dancers retained the calls very easily. They didn't forget them near as much as once a week. And they were 60 to 65, 60-ish, I would say, in that area. And I was concerned as to whether they would retain the calls or not. Right after Vernon finished one of these was our local festival, and I was involved in it and doing workshops and things, and I knew all of these people that had come in there, and they hung in there really well. And I was very pleased to see it. Now, in 3 Saturdays, we found that we did not get all the way through the mainstream program. We got 60 calls. We lacked 8 calls finishing the whole program. But we had an agreement with the clubs that were sponsoring the event that they would workshop these calls, like Vernon said, before the dance each week or every 2 weeks until those people learn those other 8 calls. So down in our area now, they've been going 4 Saturdays, and they get through the whole program without any problem and have time for additional workshopping. So it has been working out real good. One that we did down there were 4 of us callers that worked it, and Vernon was one of them. Vernon did one, I did one, and 2 other callers did the other 2. And so those dancers got to hear 4 callers in the process of their class, which also helped them retain and learn the program. So it worked out really well, and I think it has a lot of merit. It just takes time to do it.
Exactly right. You wouldn't know how we got who's over here. Okay, you use different callers when you can, because we all know that when we teach our own dancers to dance and they go out to somebody else's dance and that caller says circle left, that's a foreign language. That ain't the way Vern said it, and so use different callers when you can.
Mark Fetzer, Jacksonville, Florida. How do you price these blast classes and pay callers to do them if you're not doing them? John said that you had 4 callers working together on one.
I don't remember. It kind of depends a lot on what we provide, but Our all-day one was around $15 per person for an all-day, and they get their meals thrown in, the snacks thrown in, and so forth.
That's about right. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 at that time per person for the 3 Saturdays, but now that's gone anywhere from $60 to $80 per person this day and time. And if there's a hall rent, then you pay the caller whatever you can over the top of it. We just all volunteered to help do it.
Yeah. During lesson time, I'll do them for nothing. If it'll get new boots in the floor, I'll do them for nothing. But I'll also tell those folks that remember now that when things get good, remember me. Okay, but we've in the days and times of getting $1,500 for a set of lessons, those are over. We've got to give back, and that's one way we can give back. I had some other point to make, but it doesn't make any difference because it's 2:15, so we're going to have 3:15, whatever time it is. 2:34. Huh? It doesn't. No, it doesn't say that on the schedule. I've got my guidebook here, and it says 2:15. But anyway, we'll go to 2:30 now if that's what everybody wants. Does anybody?
Yeah, the freshman's 2:30.
2:30 is the break.
2:30. Well, you're not helping my cause any.
The main thing about the blast you have to realize is there's nothing set in stone. Everybody can take and experiment any way you want to, and use it any way you want to, because it's a tool. It's just a tool, and you can use it and adapt it and work it the way it works best for you in your area. If you start lessons in September, you always start in September, you don't have a marketing tool because you're always doing it one time, you don't offer it any other time, and everybody's sitting there saying, I'd like to take it, but I can't do Septembers. But if you do a blast class, at least get them hooked, they'll stay and do some more.
We've done review blasts, and I'm sorry, Risha Schlitter from North Carolina, Carrie. We've done review blasts at our house, so that's possible. And we originally tried to do it from like 9 to 5, but 3 o'clock their eyes just glaze over, they want to go home, and so we've just learned to keep it shorter. We've done, about $10 a person, but we make it a potluck, being that we're from North Carolina. And that usually works pretty well because then people actually get excited about they talk about the food that they're going to bring, so then they get excited about that aspect too. So we tell them we work for food.
No doubt. Before I get to you, Richard, I remembered what I was going to say before the 2:15 debacle. The pricing. Okay, we've got to make sure that we don't underprice ourselves. Not overpriced. I'm not worried about overpriced. I'm talking about underpriced. We have a value that we're selling, and that value ought to have a value attached to it. We always talk about getting new people or younger people, not new people, but younger people involved in our activity. And one of the things that younger people have said, and it came from that survey that most of us chose not to believe, they said, oh, really? That's all it costs? It can't be that much fun then. Okay, that's how young people think. If it doesn't cost very much, it can't have any value or fun to them. So we've got to make sure that we don't underprice ourselves. I'm going here, and then you, Ron.
Richard Williams from Pittsburgh, PA. Our Callers Association runs blast class from time to time. We do it more as a service. All the callers in the area come out to work and help out wherever needed. We charge like $10 a person coming in. The lunches, we haven't considered doing that. Our people have always come back. But we do it more as a review type of thing for dancers that have either want to come back into square dancing or they're having troubles at their clubs and they showed up and they want to learn. So they do come back even though you let them out if you don't have the lunch program. And a lot of them have appreciated it. In fact, we did it one year and we skipped a year, and they asked us, why did we skip it? Aren't we going to have another one? Because they wanted to come back and learn, because they just, when they get to their clubs and different callers coming in, because some of them aren't in our area are run by the clubs themselves, and they hire different callers coming in. So they get different callers' voices, and they're really not up to dancing to them.
Ron Kaepernick in the old days, New Jersey. When I was running the class up there for the club up there, we'd pay at the beginning a fee for each of the 2 semesters, and at the end of the second semester, I would tell the dancers that are graduating You have now paid me for the class. I expect you to come back next year an angel, and after that you can come back an angel as often as you want, and I don't expect angels to pay.
Yes.
Doc Hiraga from Japan. I'm going to give a presentation next session, but in a part of it, I would like to say that my experience that even in local area of Japan, okay, square dancing have a very strange power to collect people. Do you know what? The most important thing is that you don't show the dance with a fancy attire first thing. Okay, if I do that, people, oh, that's not mine, and they go away in 3 minutes or 5 minutes. But once they realize there is a rule, just a simple rule of making square sets, and that is the square dance is done by some kind of funny word, but still it's I feel attractive to remember that. Maybe I can do that. They think if they once knew the rule of squares, without knowing that, and also the rule of dancing to the car, don't show dance before they realize that rule. So it is very important to let them know the rule. But how to do it is very, very difficult. So just imagine that the general public, they don't know anything. So first idea we have to give them is a key, I think. The simplest rule of squares must be spread to the general public. I am not sure what is the best way at this moment. Sorry, but I'm struggling now. But you'll be hearing some presentation next in the next session. That's the introduction. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, thank you, Doc. I think it would be wise of us to all to listen to our friends from Japan and what they are doing, because per capita they have more square dancers than the U.S. does, and ever growing population of square dancers, where ours is not. So we should probably give heed a lot of advice from our Japanese friends. Any other questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Ted Rotwood, Pennsylvania. I have read about a club in Ohio called Friendly Squares, and their concept of a blast class was about after 4 or 5 of the usual weekly sessions, they had a Saturday session, and it was used for 2 purposes. One was people that had been taking the lessons for 5 weeks could come as a nice review, and if any of those those students got their friends excited, they could come out on that blast class, and they would basically teach. On that day, they would teach those things that were taught the first 4 lessons, so they could also use it as a recruiting tool in addition to a review.
Such a deal. There we go. We've got a new tool that we can use. What a great thing. What a great thing. Great idea. We've got to come up with use the new ideas. And then those of us who are not familiar with the new ideas have got to quit being roadblocks and getting in the way. If you don't understand it, that's fine. Get out of the way and let somebody try something. Anything else? All right, good. Now I'm going to wrap it up.
Can I say
something?
Yeah, I'll just say this. I realize the amount of time you're here at the convention and you're choosing the different sessions to go to. We want to thank you for choosing this session to be with us, and hope you've learned a little bit, or maybe you've got some ideas of something you can use when you go home. So thank you for spending part of your convention with us.
Exactly right. And I also want to take this time to remind everybody that in your convention packet there was a critique sheet. Don't be ashamed to use that. We use that information in planning next year's convention. So please, please, please fill it out. Be honest. Be brutally honest if you want to. It's okay. We have thick skin. We take that information and try to improve upon the convention experience. And then please turn those in Wednesday morning at the Wednesday morning meeting. Okay? We do listen to what you have to say. With that, we appreciate you being here. Thank you, Dana, for being here. How about a nice hand for him? You bet. Nice hand for y'all. We appreciate y'all being here greatly. Enjoy the rest of your convention, and now y'all get out.